Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Barakah HaKodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you, sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in Ezekiel chapter 36 verse 5. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen, and against all Idumea, which is the Greek way of saying Edom, and the biblical Edomites are the so-called white people, which have appointed my land into their possession with the joy of all their heart, with despiteful minds, to cast it out for a prey. And I'm opening this video with this verse to show that those people over in the land right now, the 1948ers, aren't the true people of the book. The true Israelites are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Those people over there right now taking that title are those Idumeans or Edomites, more specifically Amalekite Edomites. And when you look at all the prophecies and verses in the scriptures dealing with what the true children of Israel would be doing and going through when they were back in the Holy Land, those Amalekite Edomites don't fit any of those prophecies, but they do fit Ezekiel 36 verse 5, where it says, which have appointed my land into their possession. Those Amalekite Edomites appointed the Holy Land into their possession, beginning with the Balfour Declaration in 1917 and further cementing the deal in 1948 with UN charters and the Israeli Declaration of Independence. And ever since those Amalekite Edomites did that, you've seen nothing but wars and conflicts in that land and all across the planet. But as it says in Isaiah 60 verse 18, violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation and thy gates praise, when the true children of Israel, beginning with the elect, or the 144,000 and the rest of the righteous 1/3 were back in the Holy Land, violence would no more be heard in the Holy Land. But like I just said, ever since those Amalekite Edomites appointed that land into their possession, immediately you had the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, you had the Korean War in the 50s, the 6 Days War, and the Vietnam War in the 60s. You had many conflicts in Central and South America in the 80s, the first Gulf War in the early 90s, the second Gulf War, or the Iraq War in 2003, the war in Afghanistan in 2001, the Syrian Civil War, the Ukrainian conflict, etc., etc. Just recently, you had a conflict around the Gaza Strip between the IDF, or the Israeli Defense Force, and Hamas, and we haven't even gotten to World War III yet. So those Amalekite Edomites, those Amalekite Idumeans do not fit the prophecies dealing with what the true children of Israel would be doing or going through when they were back in the Holy Land. And I opened up with these verses to preface this article on Haaretz.com titled, Israel successfully tests airborne laser interception of drones. Test involved aerial laser system installed on a plane which intercepted and destroyed UAVs at different ranges and flight altitudes, Israel's defense ministry says. And what do you think that this laser was created for? To keep Israel and those Amalekite Edomites safe from their enemies, from Iran, Hamas, these other Arab nations, you name it. But as we just read in Isaiah 60 verse 18, violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation and thy gates praise. And conflict will continue in that land between those Amalekite Edomites and these other heathen nations until they're taken out of the land and the true children of Israel are back in the land. And once the true children of Israel are back in the land, violence will no more be heard in that land, and these heathen nations will actually come up to the Israelites to learn of our laws, statutes, and commandments. As it says in Micah chapter 4, I'm going to read verses 1 to 3. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of Yahweh shall be established in the top of the mountains. And in the scriptures, mountains can be symbolic for power structures or governments. This is talking about the government of the kingdom of heaven, beginning with the elect. the 144,000, and the rest of the righteous 1/3. And it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. And many nations, many heathen nations shall come and say, Come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, and to the house of the power of Jacob, not wage war against them, or threaten war. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths, learning the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, which you're clearly not seeing these heathen nations do towards those Amalekite Edomites. You don't see the majority of people reading from the Talmud, wear those Shirley Temple curls or a yarmulke, or speak Yiddish. You've got a lot of people against those Amalekite Edomites, against how they're treating those Palestinian Arabs who are the biblical Ishmaelites, which you also don't belong in that land. And also they're against how the state of Israel is constantly pushing for war with Iran. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. Something you're also not seeing going on with those Amalekite Idumeans over in the land. They've got kosher pork, and Tel Aviv is known as a pink city, and it's one of the pride hotspots on the entire planet. Hey, we're in a PRIDE month right now, and on the 25th, they're going to have a parade in Tel Aviv. And also, they have their own parliament with their own separate laws, separate from the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Just complete madness. Verse 3, And he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. Again, violence shall no more be heard in thy land. When the true children of Israel are back in the land, these heathens are no longer going to learn war anymore or create weapons of war. Hence, if those Amalekite Idumeans were the people, they wouldn't have to be building an airborne laser to defend themselves against their enemies. But let's get into this article, just to further cut those Amalekite Idumeans. The Defense Department recently completed the first test of an airborne laser system, which successfully destroyed several drones in what Defense Minister Benny Gantz hailed a major technological breakthrough. As part of the tests, the laser intercepted several unmanned aerial vehicles flying at various altitudes and at various ranges. The system was developed by Abit Systems, and the tests were done in coordination with the Air Force and the Defense Ministry's Weapons Development and Technology Infrastructure Administration, MAFAT in Hebrew. The idea of using lasers as a way of intercepting rockets was first investigated in the 1990s, but Israel stopped pursuing the idea by 2000, following the Second Lebanon War. But wait, those Amalekite Idumeans were the true people of the book, then violence would no more be heard in thy land. There would have been no Second Lebanon War. Efforts to develop a system for intercepting short and mid-range rockets and missiles were resumed in 2006, leading to the development of the Iron Dome system a few years later. 2 years ago, a breakthrough enabled Israel to resume developing a laser-based system which would be much cheaper than the Iron Dome. This time, however, Israel used electrical lasers instead of the chemical ones used in previous tests. The project involves an airborne laser developed by Elbit, as well as a ground-based laser developed by Rafael Advanced Weapons Systems. The laser system, if and when it becomes operational, will complement the systems used for missile interception, including Iron Dome, David's Sling, formerly known as Magic Wand, for mid-range targets, and Arrow 3 for long-range ones. Defense Minister Benny Gantz congratulated Elbit and the defense establishment for the technological breakthrough. You are bringing us closer to another important goal of our multi-level defense capabilities, which is to achieve protection at lower costs. The laser system will add defensive capabilities at larger ranges and against diverse targets, while greatly saving on the cost of interception and protection of this country. But what about Isaiah 60 verse 18? Violence shall no more be heard in thy land. I'm sure our defense industries will succeed in this important venture, and I'll personally be involved with the entire system in order to promote it. I'm going to jump down to the last paragraph. Rodham added that the system was not being designed to counter incendiary balloons launched by Palestinian militants from the Gaza Strip. We plan to have the system intercept various types of drones, mortar shells, and rockets. And does that sound like Micah chapter 4, where the heathen nations shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks and not learn war anymore, and especially not go against the nation of Israel, but will actually go up to the mountain of the house of Yahweh to learn of the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai? Of course not. He noted that the goal is for the system to have the ability to intercept targets at ranges of 100 kilometers within a decade, and with ranges of tens of kilometers even sooner. So that's it with this article. And this is just another cut to those Amalekite Edomites, not fitting any of the prophecies of what the true children of Israel would be doing and going through when they were back in the Holy Land. And also, the Israelites won't need weapons like tanks and lasers or fighter jets or anything like that, because the 144,000 will have spiritual powers and be like supermen on the face of the earth. All these weapons of war go back to Esau Edom's blessing being the sword in Genesis chapter 27. And the 144,000 are going to get to use those spiritual powers on the last group of heathen nations that are going to come against them, led by Russia, which is known as Gog in Ezekiel chapter 38. And we're going to use those spiritual powers to destroy those heathen nations as military's final effort and to destroy their weapons there. And then from there, go on and destroy the rest of the heathen nations as weapons across the planet. I'm going to close it out in Ezekiel chapter 39, verses 9 to 10. And they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth, beginning with the elect, the 144,000 and the rest of the righteous 1/3, and shall set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and the bucklers, the bows and the arrows, and the handstaves, and the spears, and they shall burn them with fire 7 years. The last effort of these heathen nations as militaries, led by Russia, coming against the elect in the land of Israel and being utterly annihilated. And then the 144,000 using those spiritual powers to burn up their tanks, fighter jets, artillery pieces, assault rifles, grenades, you name it. And then from there, going to destroy the rest of the heathen nations as military weapons across the planet, so that they shall take no wood out of the field, neither cut down any out of the forests, for they shall burn the weapons with fire. And if you don't have wood to kindle a fire, what are they going to burn those weapons with? Those spiritual powers. And they shall spoil those that spoiled them, and rob those that robbed them, saith the Lord Yahweh. And hey, once this last effort by the heathen nations as militaries is completely squashed, then the elect are going to go and enslave the heathen nations all across the planet and get back everything they took against us. And you heathen nations are going to serve for 1,000 years of hardcore bondage and slavery, building up the kingdom of heaven. But after that 1,000 years, all the heathen nations, except for the Edomites, are going to be able to go back to their lands, but they'll still be under our subjection and under the subjection of the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. You Edomites, especially you Amalekite Edomites, are all going to be gathered up after that first 1,000 years and permanently culled from this planet with fire. And as they say, that's going to be all she wrote. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.